Some cases were never solved. Some calls were never traced.
In the dead of night, Carolyn Perron woke up freezing. The air in her bedroom was suddenly ice cold, and then she felt it. A sudden, heavy pressure pinning her legs to the bed, like something had just sat down on top of her. She looked down, but the room was entirely empty. The physical weight, however, remained. Then, leaning in so close she could practically feel the breath against her ear, a voice whispered, "You shouldn't be here." When the light finally clicked on, there was nothing to see, but the clock read exactly 3:07 a.m., marking the precise moment this hostile presence began its introduction to the family. The property in Harrisville, Rhode Island, originally looked like a sanctuary. It was 1971, and for a family with 5 young daughters, this vast wooded expanse offered quiet, rural isolation, a clean slate. Inside, life quickly settled into a mundane domestic routine. The house was old and filled with the typical creaks and groans of settling wood, but it felt entirely normal. Then, the atmosphere began to shift. The air inside the rooms grew noticeably heavier, often dropping significantly in temperature compared to the outdoors. Most alarming of all, every single clock in the house began freezing at exactly the same time every night, 3:07 a.m. The subtle anomalies quickly escalated into physical decay. A sudden, rotting odor of dead meat would spontaneously flood the kitchen or hallways, with no physical source anywhere in the walls. Meanwhile, the daughters started hearing distinct whispers echoing from deep inside the plaster. The combination of the rotting odors and the voices within the walls moved beyond the normal behavior of an aging building. The entity was effectively transforming the family's safe haven into a source of constant, inescapable dread. With the environment thoroughly corrupted, the force began choosing a specific target. It bypassed the children and focused entirely on Carolyn. She began waking up with severe, dark bruises across her arms, perfectly shaped like a human hand gripping her tightly in her sleep. The attacks were designed to isolate her. The basement, in particular, transformed into an area of absolute dread. Whenever Carolyn approached the bottom stairs, the crushing sensation of being watched forced her to retreat, effectively cutting her off from parts of her own home. The psychological torment climaxed on a freezing afternoon. Alone in the house, Carolyn turned to find a gray-skinned woman with hollow eyes standing behind her. The figure tilted its head, twisted its mouth into a sickening smile, and whispered, "Leave, or I will make you." Random hauntings involve residual energy acting out in a space. This entity operated on a different logic, executing a predatory hunt meant to isolate Carolyn and erode her ability to resist. Desperate for an explanation, Carolyn dug into the local archives. The land's history revealed a horrifying pattern dating back to the 1700s. Generations of inhabitants had suffered bizarre tragedies on the property, from unexplained vanishings to children drowning in the nearby creeks and bodies found hanging in the barns. One name appeared constantly in the records: Bathsheba Sherman. In the 1800s, locals actively avoided her, convinced she practiced dark rituals and swore a violent vow against anyone claiming her land. With the violence escalating, the Perrons called in paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. As soon as Lorraine crossed the threshold, she sensed the sheer density of the aggressive energies occupying the space. Lorraine identified the exact mechanism at play: an attachment. A standard spirit might linger in a hallway, but a dominant energy bypasses the physical architecture entirely. It latches directly onto a specific person's life force, channeling all its hostility into one host. The historical violence and the targeted bruising on Carolyn's arms pointed to one devastating reality. The force inside the farmhouse was executing a calculated, deliberate process to achieve permanent possession of Carolyn Perron. To stop the process, the Warrens took a massive risk. They arranged a séance at the dining table. The goal was to establish direct communication with the entity to uncover its specific demands, rather than attempting a forced exorcism they weren't prepared for. As Lorraine called out to the presence, the room's temperature plummeted. Without warning, Carolyn's chair began to drag slowly across the floor before violently shuddering. Her body completely stiffened. Her head snapped backward, and a deep, guttural voice tore out of her throat. It simply stated, "I won't leave." The table violently shook as Carolyn's body was physically lifted out of her seat. The terrifying display of power sent her husband Roger into a panic, forcing him to scream for the Warrens to shut the entire session down immediately. The séance was a catastrophic miscalculation. By inviting the entity to speak, they hadn't gained any leverage. They had only handed a microphone to a deeply hostile force, provoking it into an outright display of dominance. The Warrens departed shortly after, leaving a fractured family behind. Over the years, the massive physical attacks plateaued, but the underlying dread remained constant, until the Perrons finally saved enough money to flee. The investigators officially closed their file with a grim conclusion. This was never a standard haunting. Today, the Harrisville farmhouse still stands at the end of that quiet dirt road. It looks remarkably unchanged in the daylight, yet locals who know the history actively refuse to go anywhere near the property line. Because the records, the bruises, and the history all point to the exact same truth. The land is permanently claimed territory, and whatever opened Carolyn's eyes at 3:07 a.m. is still waiting in the dark.